This is Abe Friedtanzer from Awards Buzz, and I'm very excited to be speaking with Robin Carolan about the score for Nosferatu. How are you, Robin?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. Yeah, not too bad.
I had a chance to see this film a few days ago, and the score is quite thunderous and pretty intense in terms of guiding the mood of the film. Can you talk about where you first started with it?
What in terms of like developing the sound?
Yes.
Um, I mean, I'd known about Nosferatu for a long time. I mean, Rob, Rob and I, so Robert Eggers, Rob and I had been mates for quite a while before we started working together. And Nosferatu is just something that he'd been talking to me about for a very long time. This was before I was even supposed to do the music for it. So I had a pretty good idea as to what he wanted to do with the story and why he wanted to do it. And whenever we like start on a project, we tend to kind of like build up these huge playlists of music, you know, like influences, inspirations, things that we think might sort of kind of like help out. And some of those playlists are like days long. I mean, it's a lot of music. So it's yeah, we just sort of we really kind of think about the sound of the film long before anything has really happened. So then when it comes to actually sort of like sit down and write the thing, I have a pretty clear idea as to how I want everything to kind of be. And I knew with this one, I knew Rob, obviously it needs to kind of be scary and it needs to be ominous and there needs to be a lot of dread. But I also knew Rob wanted this score to feel quite sweeping as well and almost sort of old Hollywood in a way, quite grand. And I was like really happy to do that because I mean it was such a shift from The Northman, which is the last film we worked on together. So I was really excited to just do something that kind of felt a bit grander, I guess.
Can you share what some of those influences were that were on that playlist for this?
Yeah, I mean, Rob and I are always sort of talking about people like Penderecki, Ligeti, Bartok, you know, all those amazing 20th century sort of avant-garde composers, they're always on our mind. But then Coil is always kind of a big one for me. Even if like what I end up writing or making doesn't necessarily sound like Coil, they always seem to kind of be in my mind slightly. And then there were a couple of soundtracks that was sort of quite a big influence. The Eyes Wide Shut soundtrack was quite a big influence for me. And there's a soundtrack by Balanescu for a film called Angels and Insects, which is quite an obscure period drama from the 90s. It's amazing, but no one really seems to have heard of it. But Rob and I have both kind of been obsessed with that film for a while, and the soundtrack, the score is just incredible. So yeah, that was a big one for me as well.
And there's obviously the original film from, 100 years ago. Is that something you looked at or listened to or specifically wanted to not take into account?
No, I tried to avoid it to be honest. I mean, the thing with the original as well is there are so many. I mean, it's almost become kind of like a, a mini industry of people creating their own scores for the original and you know often performing them live with the film. Um, so it's almost like disorienting how many variations on that initial film there are. Um, but I think that and also like the 70s remake, which I love. I kind of purposely avoided because I think you know you don't want to get too in your own head about what you're doing and also you know again I think like I knew Rob would want something very different for this version of the tale. So like the Popol Vuh score for the 70s version is amazing, but it's very of its time and it you know it's not the kind of thing that would work for Rob's film. So no, I just tried to sort of stay away really.
I would normally ask if you have specific themes you write for certain characters, but I think that Nosferatu is such a lingering influence over all this film that I feel like he's present in every scene, even and especially when we don't see him.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, there was I wanted to kind of come up with this spiral motif. So when we recorded the score, I had the string players, and we had a lot of string players as well. So we had about 60 string players. It was like a really big production. I had them play this like spiral motif and sort of had them play it in different ways, different variations. And the whole idea behind the spiral motif is effectively as soon as you start to hear that whilst watching the film, even if Orlok isn't present, he is present. So it's kind of like, yeah, it's his invisible presence, I guess. And yeah, I just, the whole idea was I wanted to create something that, sounded hypnotic, but also sounded quite queasy and sort of almost like disturbing, depending on the way the spiral was played. So yeah, that reoccurs a lot throughout. Because I mean, the funny thing about Nosferatu is Orlok's not really in it a lot. He's not physically anyway, but so you have to kind of find a way to sort of constantly suggest his presence without him actually physically being there. So yeah.
And while it's, twisted and brutal, there is a romance of sorts in this film. Did that play into the way you were composing it all?
Yeah, totally. I mean, that was probably one of the things I was most excited to kind of delve into. I think, again, like when we did the Northman score, that score is very vibey and it's a lot of drones and it's a very kind of like rough and ready score. So with Nosferatu, I was really excited to I mean, also like lean into the music of the period. The 1800s was sort of known for, the romanticism. So I was really excited to just kind of like dive into that. And the story is predominantly about Ellen, and she's such a tragic, misunderstood character. And there is this sort of weird, fucked up romance. I mean, it's not romance, but there is something weird going on between her and Orlok. And I wanted to find basically it was really important to try and sort of create something that did sound romantic and lush and kind of beautiful, I guess, but do it in a way where everything's just slightly off. It's all a bit kind of skewed. And the last 10 minutes of the film, that piece really sort of like that was sort of the epitome of all of that, I guess. I kind of wrote that as if it was a sort of messed up wedding procession or something. So yeah, it's kind of it's a story of like two halves really in this version.
Have you had a chance to see and hear the film on a big screen?
Yeah, I've seen it. I've seen it probably too many times at this point. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I've seen it many times. I mean, I always start the projects quite early as well. Rob tends to have me start writing as soon as he starts post. So the process is usually pretty long. So yeah, I've seen that film many times and I've seen it change many times as well. Yeah. I mean, it's still great, but yeah, I've definitely seen it a lot.
Is there a preferred format you'd recommend for audiences who really want to make sure they get to, hear the score as best as possible to see it in?
I mean, I'd say IMAX. I mean, not just for the score, but I mean, just for the whole experience, really. I mean, the sound design is incredible, and that's something that Rob puts a lot of stock in. The sound design really popping, and um, it means myself and the sound design guys have to work really closely so that we're not competing and hopefully kind of complementing one another. But it's just, I mean, it's just a beautifully made, beautifully shot film. The cinematography is incredible. It's, I think it's the kind of film you don't see being made too often these days. So I'd say if you can, see it in IMAX. Yeah.
Well, you started off by saying that, you have to build dread in certain things. And I think horror movies do very often have to have this, sharp noise that's going to trigger you to a jump scene. In this film has like two or three that I might consider that, but otherwise it's more about the sustained building of dread and just feeling that. And then, that ominous shadow of the hand, going over the city and all that. And so I definitely do think that there's a very strong relationship where, in a sense, the audience shouldn't be able to tell the difference between sound design and score at certain points, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing, it's quite Nosferatu, Dracula, whatever you want to call it. It's quite a sort of slow moving story. So it's not really about constant sort of like jumps and shocks. And it is more about that kind of sustained dread and also just that sense of something other that you can't really put your finger on, and it means the music, it should feel more ominous than anything, almost claustrophobic at times. So yeah, the sound design and the music. I mean, again, that's why it was really important that we were constantly kind of in touch with what the other was doing because, it's important I not make music that sounds too much like sound design, and then vice versa, I guess, or like too much sound design to the point where it's going to obscure maybe like an important melody or a motif. Um, so yeah, it's very much about that sustained sort of that sustained feeling, really.
Do you have plans to score other films in the future? Maybe something else again with Rob?
Yeah, I mean, I think yeah, like Rob and I are planning to do. Yeah, we've got we've got plans. Um, I mean, you can never really say too much, can you? But yeah, I mean, Rob and I, it's a really amazing collaboration, and I think sort of said it before, but Rob and I have been friends for a long time, and we were friends before we started working together, and we share a lot of the same interests, the same sort of sensibilities. So I think now we work together, that really it's just super beneficial. I can sort of Rob wants a lot of music for his films nowadays, and I think when you have to write that much music, I think it helps when there's a certain level of like telepathy, because you save so much time. You don't have to sort of discuss everything always. So yeah, Rob and I think yeah, we've got some things that we're talking about, and then yeah, other directors, other films. Yeah, I'd love to. I think it's just I'm just interested to see what happens next. I guess this is only my second score, so it's like yeah, I still feel like I'm sort of finding my way in this world, but yeah, we'll see.
Well, this is awards buzz, so I'm always curious about people I'm talking to. What have you seen, or in your case, heard recently? What scores are really sticking with you as particularly awards worthy?
Um, do you know what? I think it's because I'm in the UK, so a lot of these films are not out yet. I've been quite bad about sort of following what has been going on. I'm planning to watch Blitz tonight, so I know Hans Zimmer score. I'm quite interested to see that. Um, I don't know. I mean, I've kind of been in a bit of a bubble this year as well. I've sort of not really been listening to a lot of new stuff. But I'm excited to see Conclave. I'm really excited to hear that score. I need to check out, is it Emily Perez or is it Emil Perez? Like, I can't.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm really, I need to look out for that because I know everyone's been raving about that. Yeah, I think a lot of the films that I've seen this year that I've really liked so far anyway haven't really had a lot of score. So I almost, yeah, I'm not. I'm probably not qualified to answer about like the score category at this point, but I do plan to rectify that.
What are some of those films that didn't have scores that you found memorable?
I watched a film called, and it does have a little bit of score, but it's very much it's a very very quiet film. It's not super musical. I watched a film called Red Rooms, which is like a French Canadian film, and that really blew me away. Um, really dark and just yeah, I mean it really got under my skin. And then what else have I seen? I really liked Strange Darling. Thought that was a really cool film. Um, yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I watch loads of films, but as soon as you're put on the spot, like yeah, your mind just empties. It's like I need to check my list of what have I actually watched this year. I watch a lot of old movies because I'm a bit like Rob. Like I kind of when I've got spare time, I sort of watch a lot of older movies because I see it as a sort of form of research. So I've been watching, I mean, I feel like the last 2 months I've just been watching really old Japanese horror films like Kaidans. Uh, But again, I need to check out some newer stuff, get a bit more up to date.
Well, it's so nice talking through your work with you, Robin, and I look forward to hearing what you do next. And I hope you enjoy catching up on all these films and scores.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And yeah, thanks for chatting to me.